The Cursed Manor. What haunts its crumbling walls? A supernatural horror story. The town of Blackridge had always whispered about Hollowbrook Manor, a decaying structure that loomed over the landscape like a dark shadow. Located deep in the woods, the manor had been abandoned for over a century, its history shrouded in mystery. Some said it had been cursed by its original owner, a man driven mad by grief, while others believed that the manor itself was alive, feeding on those who dared to enter. Nathan Miller, a history enthusiast with an insatiable curiosity, had heard the stories countless times. His obsession with uncovering the truth behind local legends led him to Hollowbrook Manor, despite the warnings of the town's residents. His friends Ava Harper, Ethan Rivers, and Lena Taylor had reluctantly agreed to join him on this expedition, more out of loyalty than excitement. "I still don't understand why we have to do this," Ava muttered as they stood at the edge of the forest, staring up at the silhouette of the manor in the distance. "It's just an old house," Nathan replied, brushing off her concerns. "The curse is a myth. We'll be in and out by morning." Lena, the most superstitious of the group, shivered. "I've got a bad feeling about this. My grandmother used to say the manor is haunted by the spirits of those who died there." Ethan laughed, slinging an arm around Lena. "Relax, Lena. It's just a spooky story to keep kids from wandering too far. Besides, we've survived worse, right?" Nathan led the group down the narrow dirt path, their footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. The manor grew larger as they approached, its once grand facade now weathered and crumbling. Vines snaked up the walls and the windows were boarded shut, giving it an eerie, abandoned look. As they reached the gate, a figure emerged from the shadows. Mr. Harrow, the manor's elderly caretaker, glared at them with narrowed eyes. He was a man of few words but had made it his life's mission to warn anyone who dared approach Hollowbrook Manor. "You kids shouldn't be here," he growled, his voice gravelly. "This place isn't safe." Nathan stepped forward confidently. "We're just looking around for the night. We'll be careful." Mr. Harrow shook his head. "You think you know what you're walking into, but you don't. The manor has a way of keeping those who enter. Many have gone inside, but few have come out." "Thanks for the warning," Nathan said, brushing past him and pushing open the creaky gate. The others followed hesitantly, casting nervous glances back at Mr. Harrow, who watched them with a look of foreboding. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he muttered as they disappeared into the overgrown courtyard. The manor loomed above them, its broken windows staring down like soulless eyes. Nathan, ever the adventurer, pushed open the heavy front door with a groan. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust, the once luxurious furnishings now covered in a layer of grime. "Well, this place is charming," Ethan joked, his voice echoing through the vast, empty hall. "Shall we set up camp?" Nathan smiled. "First, let's look around. There's bound to be something here worth finding." They split into pairs, with Nathan and Ava heading upstairs while Ethan and Lena explored the ground floor. The dim light from their flashlights barely pierced the darkness, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. As they walked, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside made her jump. "This place gives me the creeps," she whispered. "What are we even looking for?" "Anything that proves the curse is real," Nathan said excitedly. "Old letters, journals, anything that can tell us what happened here." Downstairs, Ethan and Lena made their way through the decaying living room. The once opulent furniture was covered in dust, and the wallpaper peeled in long strips from the walls. A large, ornate mirror hung crookedly above the fireplace, its surface dull and foggy. "This is exactly where I don't want to be," Lena muttered, hugging herself as they walked. Ethan smirked, shining his flashlight at her. "Don't tell me you're scared already?" She gave him a pointed look. "I just don't like this place. Something feels wrong." Before Ethan could reply, a loud bang echoed through the house, causing both of them to jump. It sounded like a door slamming shut somewhere deep within the manor. "Probably just the wind," Ethan said, though his tone was less confident now. Lena glanced nervously at the mirror above the fireplace. For a split second, she could have sworn she saw something move in the reflection, something that wasn't either of them. She blinked, but the mirror now showed only their distorted images in the faint light. "Did you see that?" Lena whispered, grabbing Ethan's arm. Ethan frowned. "See what?" In the mirror, there was something there. Ethan laughed, though it sounded forced. "You're just imagining things. This place is playing tricks on you." Lena wasn't convinced, but she didn't push the matter. They continued their exploration, but the sense of unease hung heavy in the air. Upstairs, Nathan and Ava found themselves in what must have been the master bedroom. A grand four-poster bed dominated the room, its once silk curtains now tattered and stained. The air was colder here and Ava shivered. "This place must have been incredible before it fell apart," Nathan said, running his hand over the dusty surface of a vanity table. Ava was about to reply when she heard something. A faint whispering sound, like distant voices carried on the wind. She froze, straining to listen. "Nathan, do you hear that?" He stopped and listened. "Hear what?" "Voices. Whispering." Nathan shook his head. "It's just the wind, Ava. Old houses like this make all sorts of strange noises." But Ava wasn't so sure. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if it were coming from right behind them. She turned sharply, her flashlight beam slicing through the darkness, but there was nothing there. "I don't like this," she said, her voice shaky. "I want to leave." "We can't leave yet. There's still so much to explore," Nathan insisted, though even he seemed slightly unnerved by the atmosphere of the house. As they continued their search, the whispering followed them, growing louder and more aggressive. It seemed to echo from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, until Ava couldn't take it anymore. "Nathan, we need to go," she said, her voice rising in panic. But before they could make a move, the door to the bedroom slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping them inside. Nathan rushed to the door, pulling on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The solid wood seemed immovable, as if an invisible force held it shut. Ava's heart raced, her breath coming in short gasps as the whispering voices surrounded them, growing louder and more urgent. "Nathan!" she yelled, pounding on the door, but it remained closed. Nathan, using all his strength, finally managed to crack the door open a few inches. His face, drenched in sweat, turned toward Ava. Something's holding it shut from the other side," he muttered. Before either of them could react, the whispering suddenly stopped, plunging the room into an oppressive silence. Ava, trembling, leaned against the wall for support. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. This was no ordinary house, no ordinary mystery. Something far darker was at play. As Nathan continued to wrestle with the door, Ava's flashlight beam swept across the room. Her light landed on something unusual, a small leather-bound journal tucked away in the corner of the room, partially hidden beneath a pile of rotting fabric. She knelt down, curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear, and picked up the journal. It was old, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. The cover was embossed with a strange symbol, an intricate design that sent a chill down her spine. "Nathan, look at this," she whispered, holding the journal up. Nathan stopped struggling with the door and joined her, taking the journal from her hands. He flipped it open, his brow furrowed as he scanned the pages. The handwriting was messy, frantic, as if written by someone in the throes of madness. "This looks like a diary of someone who lived here," Nathan said quietly. He began to read aloud. "October 12, 1897. The house, it whispers. Every night the voices grow louder, filling my mind with terrible thoughts. I cannot sleep. I cannot escape. The manor, it feeds on us. It knows our fears, our secrets. It uses them against us." Ava's face paled as Nathan continued reading, his voice growing softer with each word. "They say the manor was built on cursed land, that its foundations are soaked with the blood of the innocent. We are trapped, all of us. There is no escape. The manor is alive." Nathan looked up, his eyes wide. This is real. The curse, it's real. Ava swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. We need to find the others and get out of here. Now. Suddenly, the door that had been so tightly sealed flew open with a violent crash. Nathan and Ava jumped back, startled by the force of it. The room seemed to shift, the walls creaking and groaning as if the house itself was breathing. They didn't wait. Without another word, they bolted out of the room and hurried down the stairs, their flashlights flickering wildly as they went. The air in the manor had grown heavy, oppressive, as if the very atmosphere was pressing down on them. When they reached the living room, they found Ethan and Lena standing in front of the large mirror. Lena looked pale, her eyes wide with fear, while Ethan's carefree attitude had vanished, replaced by a tense, uneasy expression. "There's something wrong with this place," Ethan said, his voice tight. "We heard voices, and then we saw something in the mirror. It wasn't us, but it was watching us." Lena's hands trembled as she hugged herself. "I told you this place is cursed. We never should have come here." Nathan held up the journal. "You're right. The curse is real. We need to get out of here before it's too late." Ethan nodded. "The door's this way. Let's go." But as they moved toward the front door, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, and the heavy wooden door slammed shut with a deafening bang, locking them inside. The group froze, their fear palpable. Ava rushed to the door, pulling on the handle with all her strength, but it wouldn't move. The door, like the one in the bedroom, seemed to be held shut by an unseen force. "Let me try," Ethan said, stepping forward. He grabbed the door, but it refused to budge, no matter how hard he yanked on it. Lena's eyes darted around the room, her breathing quickening. We're trapped in here." Nathan, ever the rational thinker, tried to stay calm. "There has to be another way out. Let's check the back door or a window." They hurried through the dark hallways, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The manor seemed to shift and change around them, the walls groaning as if alive. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, something ancient and malevolent, lurking just beyond the edge of their vision. As they reached the back door, Ethan tried to force it open, but again it wouldn't move. The windows, too, were sealed tight, as if the house itself was determined to keep them inside. Lena began to panic, tears welling up in her eyes. "We have to get out of here. I don't want to die in this place." Ava wrapped an arm around her, trying to comfort her. "We'll find a way out. We just need to stay calm and stick together." But deep down, Ava wasn't sure if they could escape. The house felt like a living, breathing entity, one that fed on their fear. And the more terrified they became, the stronger the presence seemed to grow. As they regrouped in the main hall, Ethan's flashlight flickered, then went out. He slapped it a few times, but it remained dead. The others' flashlights soon followed, plunging them into darkness. Suddenly, the whispering returned, louder and more insistent than before. It seemed to come from all around them, echoing through the walls and floor. Nathan, holding tightly to the journal, strained to make out the words, but they were garbled, incomprehensible. "We need to find out what's causing this," Nathan said, his voice shaking slightly. "There's something in this house, something tied to the curse. If we can figure it out, maybe we can stop it." Lena wiped away her tears. "But how? We don't even know what we're dealing with." Nathan flipped through the journal, scanning the frantic entries for any clue. "The curse, it's tied to the land. The manor was built on a cursed foundation. If we can find whatever is at the center of it, maybe we can break it." Before they could formulate a plan, a sudden loud thud echoed through the house, followed by the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps coming toward them from the darkness. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What is that?" The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just beyond their line of sight. In the faint light filtering through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, they could just make out a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the hall. The figure was tall and gaunt, its face obscured by the darkness. It didn't move, but its presence sent a chill through the group, freezing them in place. Ava's voice trembled as she whispered, What do we do? Nathan, his heart pounding, took a step forward, holding the journal tightly in his hands. Who are you? He called out, his voice shaking. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly lifted a hand, pointing toward the staircase that led to the upper floors. Then, without a word, it vanished into the shadows. Lena let out a small whimper. What does it want? Nathan stared at the spot where the figure had disappeared, his mind racing. I think it wants us to follow. The group stood frozen, staring at the spot where the shadowy figure had pointed toward the staircase. The air in the manor felt thicker, heavier, as if it were pressing down on them with a malevolent force. Nathan was the first to break the silence. We have no choice, he said quietly. If we want to find out what's going on, we have to follow. Lena looked horrified. You can't be serious. That thing, it was pointing upstairs. We don't know what's waiting for us up there. Nathan met her gaze, his voice steady but firm. We don't have a choice. The front and back doors are sealed and the windows won't open. If there's a way to stop the curse, it's up there. Ethan glanced uneasily at the staircase. I'm not thrilled about it, but Nathan's right. Staying here isn't going to help. Ava swallowed her fear and nodded. Let's stick together. We can't afford to split up. With flashlights flickering weakly, they made their way to the staircase. The wood creaked ominously under their weight, each step feeling like a descent deeper into the unknown. Shadows seemed to dance along the walls, and the temperature dropped the higher they climbed. At the top of the stairs, they found themselves in a long hallway lined with doors. Most of the rooms had been explored earlier, but the figure had pointed toward one specific door at the far end of the corridor, a door they hadn't noticed before. It was old and weathered, its surface covered in strange carvings that none of them recognized. Nathan ran his fingers over the engravings, his brow furrowed. This door wasn't here earlier, he said quietly. Ava's voice was shaky. Then how is it here now? Nathan shook his head, pushing the door open with a creak. Beyond the threshold was a narrow staircase, leading downward into what appeared to be a basement or cellar. A musty, damp smell wafted up from the depths, making them all instinctively take a step back. Ethan shone his flashlight into the dark stairwell. A hidden basement. This just keeps getting better. We have to go down there, Nathan said, his tone determined. The answers we're looking for are below. Lena looked like she was on the verge of breaking down, but she followed the group as they descended the stairs. The air grew colder and the walls were damp to the touch. Cobwebs brushed against their faces, and the oppressive atmosphere seemed to intensify with every step. At the bottom, they found themselves in a large, stone-walled chamber. It looked nothing like the rest of the manor. This space was ancient, far older than the house above it. In the center of the room stood a stone altar, surrounded by strange symbols etched into the floor. What is this place? Ava whispered, her voice barely audible in the echoing chamber. Nathan's flashlight beam swept over the altar, revealing a book, much like the journal he had found earlier, resting in the center. Unlike the other journal, this one seemed meticulously kept, its cover pristine despite the surrounding decay. Nathan picked it up cautiously, flipping through the pages. His eyes widened as he read aloud. The manor was built to contain the curse. The land itself is cursed, tainted by the blood of those who were wronged. The house was meant to trap the evil, but over time the curse grew stronger, feeding on the souls of those who enter. The only way to break the curse is to release the spirits that have been bound here, to offer them peace. But beware, for the house does not wish to lose its grip. It will do everything in its power to stop you. The room seemed to grow colder as Nathan finished reading. Ava's breath fogged in the air. We have to release the spirits. That's the only way to end this. Lena shuddered. But how do we do that? Nathan pointed to the symbols etched into the floor. These markings. They must be part of a ritual. If we can figure it out, maybe we can free the spirits and end the curse. As he spoke, the stone walls seemed to groan, and the ground beneath them trembled. It was as if the house knew they had discovered its secret, and it wasn't happy. The ground continued to shake beneath them, the very walls of the hidden chamber rumbling with an ominous force. Dust fell from the ceiling and cracks began to snake through the stone, as if the manor itself was reacting to their discovery. "We need to hurry," Ava shouted over the noise, her voice trembling with urgency. Nathan quickly flipped through the book, searching for any clue on how to complete the ritual. The symbols on the floor pulsed with a faint glow, their meaning still a mystery. Ethan and Lena watched anxiously, their eyes darting toward the stairs as the shaking intensified. "There's a way to perform the ritual," Nathan said, scanning the ancient text. "But we need to gather certain objects from the manor, items tied to the spirits that are trapped here." Lena's voice cracked with fear. "We don't have time. The house is coming apart. We don't have a choice." Nathan shot back. "If we don't do this, we'll be trapped here forever." Ethan nodded grimly. "What do we need to find?" Nathan scanned the pages quickly. 3 items. Each one belonged to someone who died here, someone bound to the curse. "We need to find their personal belongings and bring them here." Ava frowned. "And where do we find these items?" Nathan hesitated, looking at the faded illustrations in the book. "The attic, the study, and the old nursery. That's where the book says they'll be." The group shared a nervous glance, knowing that splitting up would be dangerous, but they had no choice. Time was running out and the house was closing in around them. "I'll check the attic," Nathan said. "Ethan, you go to the study. Ava and Lena head to the nursery." Ethan slapped Nathan on the back, his voice tense. "Let's get this done and get out of here." They hurried up the stairs, the oppressive atmosphere thickening with every step. As they reached the main floor, the shaking subsided, but the house seemed darker, more sinister. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, and the air crackled with energy. Nathan climbed the stairs to the attic, his flashlight barely illuminating the cobweb-filled space. The attic was cluttered with old furniture, dusty boxes, and broken toys. He rummaged through the mess, searching for anything that seemed out of place. As he dug through the boxes, he found it, a worn lace handkerchief stained with age. It was delicate, embroidered with the initials EM. He knew immediately that it belonged to one of the spirits. Meanwhile, Ethan made his way to the study. The room was dark and foreboding, with towering bookshelves and a grand oak desk in the center. He rifled through the drawers, his heart racing. There, in a hidden compartment, he found an old, tarnished pocket watch. Its surface was etched with strange symbols, and he could feel a cold energy radiating from it. Ava and Lena made their way to the nursery, the place where the spirit of a child was said to reside. The room was small and eerie, with faded wallpaper and a crib in the corner. As Ava shone her flashlight around the room, Lena froze, her eyes fixed on a small doll lying on the floor. The doll's glass eyes seemed to follow them as they moved, and Lena shuddered. She reached down and picked it up, feeling the weight of it in her hands. This was the final item. With the 3 objects in hand, they regrouped in the hidden chamber. The air was thick with tension, the walls creaking ominously as if the house knew what they were about to do. Nathan placed the handkerchief on the altar, followed by Ethan with the pocket watch and Lena with the doll. As soon as the items touched the surface, the symbols on the floor glowed brighter, and a low, rumbling sound filled the room. "The ritual," Nathan muttered. "We need to start it now." As the glow of the symbols intensified, the air in the hidden chamber thickened with an unnatural energy. The entire manor seemed to hum with anger, its walls groaning in protest as if the house itself were aware of their attempts to break the curse. Nathan, Ethan, Ava, and Lena gathered around the altar, their faces bathed in the eerie light. Nathan flipped through the book one final time, reciting the words he had deciphered earlier. "We call upon the spirits trapped in this place, bound to this cursed ground. By these tokens of your past we release you. Find your peace, and may this house hold you no longer." As his voice echoed off the stone walls, the air grew colder still. The symbols beneath their feet began to pulse, their light casting long shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally across the room. The temperature dropped rapidly, and their breaths came out in visible puffs of air. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and a deafening crash sounded from above. The house was reacting, fighting back against the ritual. Cracks spread along the walls, and pieces of stone began to crumble from the ceiling. Lena screamed as the lights of their flashlights flickered and went out, plunging the chamber into near-total darkness. Only the faint glow of the symbols remained, casting a sickly light across their terrified faces. "We have to finish this," Nathan shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of the collapsing house. But before they could continue, a powerful gust of wind blasted through the chamber, swirling dust and debris around them. In the whirlwind, shadowy figures began to emerge, distorted and wraith-like, their faces twisted in torment. Ava gasped. "The spirits, they're here." The apparitions floated toward them, their eyes hollow and lifeless, but filled with an overwhelming sense of pain. They hovered near the altar, drawn to the items that had once belonged to them. Nathan's voice shook as he continued the ritual, raising the book high. "Spirits of the cursed, by these tokens we release you." But instead of finding peace, the spirits seemed to grow more restless, swirling faster, their ghostly forms becoming more defined, more human-like. One of them, a woman with dark, hollow eyes, stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Lena. "You cannot save us," the woman hissed, her voice like a gust of icy wind. "The curse is stronger than you." Lena backed away, trembling. "No, we're trying to help you. We're trying to free you." The woman's face twisted into a grimace, her voice filled with sorrow. "We are bound to this place, as are you now." Nathan's heart raced. The ritual wasn't working. If anything, it was making things worse. The spirits weren't finding peace. They were growing more violent, more enraged. The house had no intention of letting any of them go. Suddenly, the chamber's door slammed shut, sealing them in. The shaking intensified, and the symbols on the floor began to flicker erratically. Ethan grabbed Nathan's arm, his voice filled with panic. "Nathan, we need to stop. It's not working." Nathan's hands trembled as he looked at the book, realizing the horrifying truth. It's not about freeing the spirits. The house feeds on them. It feeds on us. Ava gasped as the ghostly figure of a child appeared beside her, its cold, bony hand reaching for her. "What do we do now? We're trapped." The house groaned louder, and the spirits began to wail, their cries filling the chamber with an overwhelming sense of despair. The ground beneath them started to split, creating jagged cracks that spread toward the altar. "We have to destroy the house," Nathan said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the only way to end this." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. "Destroy the house? How are we supposed to do that?" Before Nathan could answer, one of the spirits, the man with the pocket watch, lunged toward Ethan, its fingers closing around his throat. Ethan gasped for breath, struggling to free himself from the ghost's icy grip. Nathan acted quickly, grabbing the pocket watch from the altar and smashing it against the stone floor. The spirit screamed in agony and dissolved into a cloud of smoke, releasing its hold on Ethan, who collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. "We destroy their tokens," Nathan said urgently. "That's how we weaken the house." Ava nodded and grabbed the doll, throwing it to the floor and stomping on it. As the doll shattered, the child spirit let out a piercing shriek and disappeared, its form dissolving into the air. Lena, hands shaking, took the handkerchief and set it ablaze using a match from her pocket. The fire consumed the delicate fabric, and the woman's spirit let out one final wail before vanishing into the shadows. But even as the spirits disappeared, the house fought back harder. The walls cracked, beams splintered, and the ceiling began to cave in. Dust and debris rained down on them as the very foundation of the house buckled under the strain. "We need to get out," Nathan shouted, grabbing Ava and Ethan by the arms and pulling them toward the stairs. The group scrambled up the stairs, barely dodging the falling debris as the manor structure gave way. The house groaned and shuddered as if it were alive, its dark energies thrashing in fury at their escape. The walls seemed to bend and twist, warping reality as the curse sought to keep them within its grip. Nathan led the way, his heart pounding in his chest. This way. The front door. They raced down the hallway, their flashlights flickering weakly as the floor beneath them trembled. The manor was collapsing, piece by piece, but they had no choice but to press on. The door that had once been sealed shut now stood slightly ajar, as if the house was giving them a fleeting chance to escape, or perhaps it was toying with them. Ethan shoved the door open, and the group tumbled out onto the overgrown lawn. Behind them, the manor groaned one final time, its windows shattering and its roof collapsing inward. A cloud of dust and ash filled the air as the cursed manor crumbled into ruin, disappearing into the night like a bad dream fading at dawn. They stood in silence for a moment, catching their breath and staring at the wreckage. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the weight of the curse seemed to have dissipated along with the house. For the first time since entering the manor, they felt free. Ava was the first to speak, her voice trembling. Is it over?" Nathan nodded slowly, still clutching the tattered journal in his hand. "I think so. The spirits are gone. The house is destroyed." Lena wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of the night. "We barely made it out." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "I'm never going near another haunted house again." Nathan smiled faintly but remained quiet, his gaze fixed on the ruins. The manor was gone, but the memories of what had happened inside would stay with them forever. As they began to walk away, the wind stirred the pages of the journal in Nathan's hand. He paused, flipping it open to one of the final entries. His eyes widened as he read the words. "The house may fall, but the land is cursed. It will rise again, fueled by the pain and suffering of those who disturb it." A chill ran down his spine, but he said nothing to the others. They had escaped, but the curse was far from broken. The cursed manor would rise again. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Check out our playlist of supernatural horror stories for more bone-chilling adventures. See you in the next story.